Hey, still alive, and both of us with full voice. Your voice has recovered, Ronnie.
It's a lot better. I mean, it started recovering towards. I started off our last show quite badly, really, with the old coughing, but it kind of got better as it went on. I wouldn't say it's 100%, but it's a lot better.
No, well, I thought it was going to lead to the coffin. Never mind.
I thought I might expire on here.
It looked like you were heading for the coffin, not just coughing. But
Tommy Cooper died during the show, didn't he?
Yeah, the first thing to say is that this is an unusual way of doing our show, and that's because you're in two places at once, Ronnie.
Yeah, this normally goes out live at 7 p.m. UK and Ireland time on a Tuesday evening now. But I've got I'll be going along to a local climate discussion about the climate crisis, where I'll be talking about veganism. So
you've actually been asked to give an address, have you?
Yeah, I've been asked to take part, and I think that's very important because that is the impact of animal agriculture and indeed the fishing industry on the climate is just so often ignored and passed over. And it's an event that's actually organised by the local Extinction Rebellion, and they tend to really focus very much on fossil fuels, and they don't say very much at all about animal agriculture, despite growing evidence that animal agriculture is actually a bigger cause of the climate crisis than fossil fuels.
Yeah, and there's also the other side of that coin, isn't there, Ronnie, where a lot of vegans would argue that veganism has got nothing to do with the environment.
That's the other side of the coin. I mean, that won't be so much the issue on Tuesday night, because it's going to be mainly kind of non-vegans I'll be talking to. So it's going to be very much about the impact of animal agriculture, and also the fact that what's caused all this in the first place, what's caused the fundamental cause of the climate crisis is speciesism and human supremacism. That's why we are where we are. So it goes deeper than it. Animal agriculture being
not to mention pandemics. I mean, it's all wrapped up with our use and rights violations of other animals.
Absolutely, and if way back, when we at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century, had we had a vegan, certainly a vegan-run society, then we wouldn't now have the climate crisis, because
I think you're right there, and that echoes the values of the pioneers of the social movement. Because I mean, sometimes people do this kind of, they reduce human history down to an hour. I'm like, we only appeared a few seconds before the hour is up, and then I think most of the damage that we've done, and this is reflected in that film that I often promote called Home, saying that kind of it's the last 50 years or so or something, and we've completely wrecked the place.
It's ever increasing. I mean, the Industrial Revolution was a big turning point, but before then, you had animal agriculture was making a huge impact. The felling of forests, and because the the farming of animals is such an inefficient way of producing food. So much more land is needed for that far more forests were felled to provide land for that than would otherwise have been the case if we all had lived on a vegan diet. So back even before the Industrial Revolution, animal agriculture, by destroying the forests and destroying the carbon sinks that would be pulling the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, that was already contributing to the problems that we have now.
Yeah, and also human warfare is part of this story as well. David Nybert writes about that in his domestication book. But I mean, it's all entangled. The fact. I mean, that explains why we are so diverse around the globe. I mean, like, people say, well, what about people who are living in very hot places and very cold places? Well, they were kind of pushed there through warfare.
Why does someone want to live on up in the Arctic or the Antarctic, somewhere like that, where you do get some people living? they would really choose to go there. It's because of aggression by other people that they were driven to those really inhospitable places. That's why that happened. And also, I would say as well, human overbreeding comes into that as well. Where we've overbred and overspread.
This raises a difficult question within me, Ronnie, about whether the vegan world is possible, because we do seem to be a very kind of violent species, and that's again what the pioneers talked about. Are we just a barbaric species? This guy. I mean, I was watching a video earlier on about this Andrew Tate character, and you just think, God, if you've got people like this in the world, we'll never have a vegan world.
It depends how we control them. But you see, the thing is, humans have got it's almost like a split personality. We've got these kind of terrible traits, terrible, violent, aggressive, oppressive traits.
Yeah, and then all the symphonies and all the
then
good,
on the other side, humans can create wonderful things, and humans can act in ways that are incredibly altruistic, both towards other humans and towards other animals. So there's these two sides of the human character, and I think it depends which side we encourage. And at the moment, we have governments all over the world that are encouraging the greedy, aggressive, accumulative, consumerist side of human, of the human potential, shall we say. Whereas what we need is systems that encourage the opposite of that, community and mutual aid.
Yeah, well, these are big issues. I mean, we could talk about neoliberalism there. In fact, we're probably going to touch on a couple of those kind of themes today. Before we start, just for us to finish off the setup in terms of what's going on right now, I'm going to be active in the chat, but Ronnie won't be because he's elsewhere. So you might see me typing away in the chat whilst this is going on, but Ronnie won't be. So just to let people know what's going on. So towards the end of the last show, Ronnie, we talked about a couple of things, but we talked about Generation Vegan and their idea about the £1 million, to the richest politician in the country, and so we felt that probably needs a little bit more. And in particular, there's a video of an interview that the CEO, I think it's CEO.
Naomi Hallam, the CEO of Generation Vegan, did an interview with Vanessa Feltz. Yeah.
So we thought we might do a bit of content analysis.
I think that would be good, because I think that is a good way of kind of talking through the issue. The whole issue is because everything in it, in a sense, is included in that video.
Yeah.
So
the first thing I want to say about it, first of all, it's not a personal attack by any means. There's that, but also we've both done TV interviews, and they're not easy. The lights, they're used to it, we're not, and this kind of stuff. And the more you do, the better you get. And so, I think in general terms, Naomi did really well, because it's a very high pressure situation, and this particular interviewer doesn't help. So I'm going to stop this little thing, because she basically asks about 5, if not 6 questions at once, which is like the worst thing you can do to an interviewee.
Yes, because you end up, and I've been in the same situation myself. You end up only really answering 1 or 2 of the questions, because you kind of
you can't remember them all.
First of all, you can't remember them all, and secondly, after you've answered 1 or 2 questions, the interviewer then asks another question.
That's right. Yeah,
so you're not given a chance to answer the other ones.
And that's actually a media technique. I mean, people like Piers Morgan would do that. Make several points. If you try to address them before you got to the end of point 1, he'd be in there again.
Yeah, and then you have to remember all the ones that he asked in the first place, and then go on and answer the supplementary one that he's asked. So really, it's not a very good way of exploring a subject. The idea is to let's get to the truth of this. Let's get to the actual facts, and let's get to the find out what this person has to say about it. And it kind of it doesn't do that. It's more a means of the interviewer putting across their point of view, which they're not supposed to do.
Yeah. Okay. So the way we're actually going to do this is that when you want to stop, just yell out, Ronnie, and when I want to stop, I'll just stop. But so should we begin?
Yes. Yeah.
A vegan campaign group is offering Rishi Sunak £1 million to be paid to a charity of his choice if he goes vegan for 1 month. Here to tell us more about it is Generation Vegan CEO Naomi Hallam. Hello, Naomi. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having
me. What happens if he says okay and just takes the $1 million?
That would be fantastic.
Has the charity got the $1 million?
Yes, we do. We have it ready to go, and we'll be out in Parliament Square next week with a big cheque ready to donate it to his charity of choice.
Really? Yeah. And why do you think it's worth $1 million to you?
Yeah, so it's a charity thing.
I think first of all,
the elephant in the room.
First of all, there's a charity. I mean, there's lots of other issues, of course, with it. The charity of his choice. Now, what if he chooses something like the British Heart Foundation, Cancer Research UK, the Alzheimer's Society? All these charities fund.
They must have thought that, right?
Experiments on animals. Well, have they thought of it? You see, I think one of the problems is this kind of so much emphasis on diet these days within the human community. Yeah, within the human community. Yeah, within the vegan community.
Vegans, yeah.
A lot of vegans, or people who regard themselves as vegan, don't consider other issues of animal oppression. And one of those issues they don't consider or don't even really know much about is animal experimentation. And the fact that, a lot of these, so-called kind of medical charities actually fund experiments on animals. I mean, if people want to know about this, go on the, in the UK anyway, go on the internet and look up Victims of Charity, which is it's kind of website run by Animal Aid, and that lists lots of different charities, and it will tell you whether those charities fund or don't fund experiments on animals. It's it's really enlightening to look at that. But a load of vegans, I mean, I see quite often on Facebook, where it's someone's birthday and they raise funds for a charity. And you'll see someone, a vegan, has put something on there. Hi, for my birthday, I'm raising funds for the British Heart Foundation. Or for my birthday, I'm raising funds for Cancer Research UK. And really, it's because I can't imagine that person as, if that person is a genuine vegan, they're not going to want to support animal experimentation. It's just that they're not aware. And I quite often politely draw their attention to the fact that that charity that they're raising funds for actually funds experiments on animals. So is there any guarantee that Rishi Sunak isn't going to use that £1 million to fund experiments on animals?
But going back to the vegans who don't know about vivisection, it's kind of like, how come? I mean, certainly the early people in the movement talked about vivisection, Leslie Cross in particular. But I mean, are we saying that for the last several years, it's never been talked about by, say, the Vegan Society or the vegan community? Or,
well, I think what's happened is there's been at one time it was the other way around. At one time, within the vegan community, there was a really big knowledge of animal experimentation and lots of campaigning against experiments on animals. And you go back to the 1970s when there was a big growth in veganism, when the animal rights movement really arose here in the UK and kind of spread throughout the world. Really, the major issue that people focused on was animal experimentation. And so really everyone was aware of that, was very, very aware of that. Now, it can be argued that really the focus should have been on vegan education. That would have been better. So there was the big focus on animal experimentation, and lots of people quite focused on campaigning against that. And then as time goes on, you know, kind of what's happened, you know, in the modern day, is that the emphasis has been much more on diets, and it's great in the sense that, you know, where there's more emphasis on animals that are oppressed and exploited for food, because that's a, you know, massive area of the oppression of other animals. It's good that there's kind of, you know, a lot more focus on that. But I think what's happened is a lot of the focus has been taken away from animal experimentation. So a lot of vegans aren't aware of it and don't think about it. And it needs to be both. We need to be aware of all areas of animal oppression and seek to avoid.
Yeah, but surely this campaign can't be unaware if they're talking about giving people massive amounts of money.
To be honest, if so many modern day vegans seem to be unaware of animal experimentation, then it wouldn't particularly surprise me if this campaign was unaware as well. I honestly don't know.
You know, but I'm the other way around. It would surprise me.
Well,
I mean, because I expected, right, that they would have a list of the ones that, you know, that they approved of, but there's no mention of it, right?
No, I mean, you know, I don't exactly know the small print of all of it, but like on the face of it, it's saying that Rishi Sunak can choose the charity of his choice.
That's the wording, and it's been used all the time. On the
poster, and that's kind of highly. Because what if you deliberately chose one? Because knowing Rishi Sunak,
but do that. But also, what about the cynical point? I mean, I thought of this and thinking, you know, quite apart from the charities that involve animal rights violations, I mean, what if suddenly, my wife has got a charity? You know, I mean, you know, and
yeah, that's it. That kind of wouldn't really surprise me, but you know, but that straight away we kind of have a problem there.
Yeah, you know. I'd say so. Anyway, we can move on. But I mean, the charity thing, I mean, at the very least, I would have thought that it'd be good to clarify that within the vegan community. But I
think it's really important that you see that this is going to come up later in this as well. See, veganism isn't a diet. Veganism is a philosophy of animal liberation. It's opposition to all oppression and exploitation of other animals, right? And obviously the oppression and exploitation of animals for food, you know, by the food industry is huge, but there are lots of other areas where that occurs, and veganism is opposed to all of it. And so we need to be opposed to it. We need to have this much broader approach. It's not just about food.
You've set me on a quest, really, because I mean, Leslie Cross certainly talked about that. And the interesting thing is the balance was right in the early days, in the sense that they did talk about food a lot because it's pretty central, right? And all that. But they also talked about vivisection, hunting, and those kind of things. So it'd be interesting to know if it's the case, when all that went quiet and it was just then about food, and therefore encourage people to think of veganism as a diet. It must have been a time.
Yeah, you see, I think this is, once again, it's something that comes up kind of later in the video as well. But you see, it's kind of, in terms of, you know, corporate industry, in terms of, like, you know, advertisers, in terms of what businesses kind of want to promote, which is going to feature heavily in what everyone sees.
Yeah, well, let's instead of us blabbing about what they're going to see, let them see it, because I can imagine part of the audience now going, just play the damn video.
Yeah, play the video. But I was just going to say that very quickly, that the diet aspect and the food aspect isn't a threat to those people, and that's why they're happy to promote that over these other things. But then we'll kind of come on to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'll start it again.
You and your charity, if the Prime Minister says, hey, okay, I will go vegan for a month, maybe he might say, you know, actually, I'm already a vegetarian, I'm nearly there, or I'm vegan a couple of days a week, as loads of people say these days. He might just go, yeah, sure, no sweat.
there.
But will you follow him with a camera?
Do you want to stop there?
Well, first of all, it's not possible to be vegan a couple of days a week or a couple of days a month or whatever. That's like saying
that's not my own mistake, is it?
Oh, no, but it shows that the idea of veganism that Vanessa Feltz has, and she's got that idea from somewhere. Right.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's what I was going to do, because let me just end her little list of things, and we'll stop again.
Make sure that he really does it. Do you think it's going to be impactful if he does do it? Do you think he might do it?
Right now, so basically, she asks about 5 questions there all at once.
Yes.
You know, I mean, like, you know, is it worth it for Generation Vegan? Just a general kind of question. What if he says I'm already vegetarian? Okay, so I mean, again, we can put this down to Vanessa Feltz as ignorance here. I'm nearly there. He might say. Maybe you might say I'm vegan for a couple of days. The thing that you said. And then she said, are you going to follow him around with the camera? Because that is another issue about what if he goes and then doesn't do it, and then you know, would it be impactful if he did do it, which is another question, and then might he do it? And so all these questions were in like the first question, so it was very difficult for her to kind of deal with that.
Yes. But I mean, going back, but you see, because veganism is a philosophy of animal liberation, it's not possible to be vegan for 2 days a week. That's like saying, okay.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, Ronnie, is that should that have been her first answer then, do you think?
Well, I think it might have helped if it had been her first answer. But you can understand why it kind of wasn't, because of this kind of, you know, because of all these questions coming at once.
Yeah, rapid fire.
But I think it's important to cover that, because this is conflating veganism with plant-based, isn't it? Which is kind of, you know, a problem throughout this, in that someone saying I'm vegan 2 days a week, it's like somebody saying I'm anti-racist 2 days a week, right? You know, 5 days a week I'm racist, for 2 days I'll be anti-racist. Now, what sense does that make? It makes no sense, you see, because veganism is a philosophy. You can't switch it on and off like that.
No,
you know,
well, I would say this is tricky, because it's a question of do you then start to almost like say, well, your questions are crap, kind of thing, which is what you'd imply if you then challenge that, or do you, as it were, just get on with it? And so that is a dilemma for the interviewee.
Well, it's difficult. You see, had I been had I been asked that question, I would straight away have explained what I've just explained to you.
Yeah, I think I would have, and in fact, I did that once on Irish TV, Irish radio, and the woman changed all the subsequent questions because of that.
Yes,
you know.
Yeah.
Now, as we'll see, unfortunately, Naomi doesn't challenge it, and in fact, she buys into it in kind of difficult ways. So let's go on.
I think he should do it. I think there's a lot of good reasons why he should, and it aligns with all his beliefs and all his targets for making a better Britain. So, I think he should, and I hope he'll consider it. I know he's a little bit of the way there. I know he doesn't eat beef.
Yeah, I mean,
this is in some ways the craziest part of this. It aligns with his views.
Yeah, I know, that's a shocking thing to say.
When Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, the shooting lobby, the people who shoot animals out of the sky and gun down other animals, celebrated, because he's a shooter and he's totally pro shooting, right? So how does that fit with him already being
maybe
almost
modern
there.
day vegans don't know we're supposed to be against shooting other animals.
You know, and the other thing is, which is probably, you know, like even more serious, is that Rishi Sunak is like a high priest of neoliberalism. You know, he's a high priest of the idea that everything should be left to the market. You know, like far right wing economics. Really, everything should be left to the market, right? It's like, you know, capitalism made into an ideology. And that whole kind of that ideology, that belief system, you know, drives consumerism, drives materialism, and therefore, you know,
it's kind of against everything that we stand for. I mean,
the destruction of the natural world and the habitat of other animals. It's going to drive pollution. It drives the climate crisis, right? You know, that political and economic philosophy is really the enemy of all life on Earth, including and above all, I would say, the lives of other animals. So it's completely contrary. Rishi Sunak's fundamental political and economic ideology that he promotes all the time is totally contrary to the vegan ethic. It's totally contrary to the vegan ethic.
I mean, I'm with you, Ronnie, because I was actually taken aback when I heard that idea that his vision of a better Britain was aligned with veganism.
And look at kind of within that what this government is doing. Look at the crackdown they're bringing on protests, which is kind of really being driven by wanting to take action against people who are campaigning for proper action to be taken against the climate crisis. They want to jail those people. They want to, you know, stop those people campaigning, stop those people protesting, right? And the climate crisis is a major contributor to the oppression of our animals. You know, billions of animals are suffering and dying, really, as I speak now, because of the effects of the climate crisis, which is kind of very largely driven by neoliberalism. And yet this government, instead of listening properly to those campaigners and putting in place proper measures to combat the climate crisis, they want to stop these people. They want to lock them up. So how is any of that?
Well, you know, I don't know, but Ronnie, she couldn't attack the government. I mean, she might say, well, these are people who've been elected. They've got more votes than anybody else. But also, if she'd have taken the line that you've just said, they wouldn't have picked this guy in the first place.
Well, yes, and once again, that's another. I kind of think I know why they did pick him.
I'd love to have been in the room.
I think because it's done for publicity, isn't it? And they thought, I will pick him because that will generate the vote. But making any suggestion that he's anywhere near already being a vegan, it's kind of just. It's like saying, oh, like kind of Hitler was really kind of close to being.
What about the follow-up little bit where she said he's already partly there because he doesn't eat beef?
Well, yeah, but what he's doing, instead of eating beef, he'll be in another. I mean, he doesn't eat beef probably if he's a Hindu. It's because of his religion.
No,
it's
but
not
just the very idea that if you eliminate one type of, you know, animal use, then you're kind of partly what. I mean, it's a bit of a ludicrous thing to say, right?
It kind of is, because he'll be eating another animal instead of the beef. Only it makes a difference.
Yeah,
and that is kind of very.
But the point is, she's going to have to say good things about the guy that they want to give $1 million to, isn't she?
Well, are there any good things to say about him? I don't really know. I don't think I can find any good things to say about him.
No, but I mean, what we've got on offer here is that his views are almost aligned with veganism already.
Yeah, but they couldn't be more. They couldn't be more the opposite of veganism, could they? Yeah. Could they be more the opposite of veganism?
Well, I don't think so. And so that's what I'm saying. I'd love to be in the room when they. And so the point is, though, you see, if the publicity kind of trumps all that, say Trump advisedly. But
well, there we are. That's somebody possibly worse than Rishi Sunak.
Yeah. So, but So getting publicity because he's the prime minister, he kind of like, this is some kind of grotesque utilitarian calculus going on here.
Yes, you see, I think this is kind of, I can see the aim of it. The aim of it is like, okay, this will generate publicity, and this will, the publicity will hopefully, encourage people to go vegan. That's the thinking behind it. This is kind of why they've done it. But there are huge negative aspects to it as well, to be weighed in the balance of all that. And like, if you want people to go vegan, like, you're kind of, you're in the course of that, what's happening is they're promoting loads of kind of non-vegan values at the same time. Like by saying Rishi Sunak is almost there. Well, like, you know what I mean? Like, kind of suggesting that, like, he's pretty much an okay guy in terms of veganism, when the absolute opposite is the case.
Yeah. Well, okay, here's a question then, Ronnie. If you were in the room and we got past the thing about the objection to giving £1 million to anybody, who would you suggest rather than this guy? And I know you're going to say anybody, but
well, you see, this is another thing. Whether this whole idea, you see, if there's £1 million to spare within the movement, is this type of thing really what it should be spent on?
It's going to be low on our list, isn't it? It's going to be well low on our list.
Yeah, is it the sort of thing? Because yes, I mean, I think getting publicity in the big media, I can see how that's helpful in terms of educating people to become vegan.
Hang on a minute. I'll challenge that because of this very. We see how difficult it is to be on the big media. We've been on the big media, but we were on the mass media when there wasn't the social media.
But you see,
so in some senses, the mass media is a bear pit, right? To use a specialist term.
Yes. I agree. But say you want to generate publicity for veganism, you want to spread vegan information, and you have £1 million with which to do that, right? Then I'd say the way to look at it is like, kind of how can we do this in the most positive way without any of the negatives? Maximize the positive of this, because you see, this is kind of also a problem with what PETA do, isn't it? PETA, whatever, however you say it, right? Is that they'll go for these really controversial campaigns that generate a lot of publicity, but also have a huge harmful effect at the same time, don't they? Like there's a racism involved, there's sexism involved, and stuff like that. And so, why do that? If you've got that money to spend on the campaign, why not look to say, well, how can we do a positive campaign that doesn't have any of these negative aspects? I think
what they might say is, well, Ronnie Lee, it's because we understand how the mass media work, and you've got to be sensational, and you've got to kind of shake the tin type of thing. Otherwise, you don't get noticed. That's what they're saying.
I think there are. Well, first of all, I think that there are ways of being sensational that would avoid, the kind of negative aspect. I mean, Animal Rebellion have done some stuff like that, I think. I mean, I know the pouring away of the milk and stuff, there was some controversy kind of there, but it wasn't really controversy, I think, in terms of kind of vegan.
It wasn't in support of neoliberalism, at least.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. No, it kind of wasn't. And the dairy blockades and stuff like that. They've done stuff, and advertising. I mean, you look at the big billboards produced by Go Vegan World. Those things are totally on point, aren't they, in terms of the vegan message? And yet those are seen by thousands and thousands, if not millions of people. Advertising that, putting an advert on the telly. You could do that for £1 million. You could place an advert that would be seen by people.
And interestingly about that is because the Go Vegan World ones are attacking kind of speciesism and promoting things like animal rights. they are controversial in their own terms, and then you get things like the farmers objecting, so that creates controversy.
Yes.
So you've got the controversy which leads to the mass media coverage without the compromise of the message.
It's just that you see, there's another question to be asked. You see, what people would say, in defence of this campaign is, right, oh well, it's going to cause like lots of people to go vegan, right? And that's the defence of it. So kind of
this campaign.
Yeah, that's what some people would argue in defence of this particular campaign to do with Rishi Sunak, and it's the same that people would argue in terms of PETA's campains as well, isn't it? Right? That like,
but come on, Ronnie. I mean, wait a minute. I mean, what you mean? You mean the nurses queuing up at the food banks?
I'm saying people within the vegan community, because this is where.
They're already vegan.
It's they're already vegan, but in terms of that they're wanting, we all want more people to go vegan, right? And so what you'll get is people within the vegan community saying, well, and they are already about this, saying, well, look, yes, but look, what you've got to look at is look how many people this is likely to turn vegan because of the publicity gained, and so, you shouldn't be objecting it. You shouldn't be raising these.
But we're in a time of austerity here. Well, you are. I mean, I'm in Ireland, but you're in a time of austerity. You've got numerous kind of trades on strike. You've got the nurses in disarray. You've got the kind of jewel in the crown of British democracy, the NHS, on its knees.
Yeah,
and it doesn't stack up.
No, well, you see, this is another negative thing in the balance. You see, what you've got, you've got people saying, well, this is going to get, spread the vegan message. You've got people saying that, but there are lots of negative aspects to it. And what you've just said, there is a negative aspect to it. It's not going to chime with ordinary people that are struggling because of the actions of this government, and it's not, and there's all the other negative aspects that I've kind of already spoken
what
about
the negative aspects in terms of alliance politics? You're going to get,
Yes.
groups and social movement organizations who are there helping the working class or helping the poor, poverty and this kind of stuff, and they go, oh, this is a great group to be aligned with.
There's that as well. There's all these things, and like the fact that some of what PETA does are going to upset the Black community, or upset gay people, upset women, and all that. That's part of it. But why, you don't need to have that negative. With £1 million, you could fund a campaign that's totally positive. And that's not thought of. You see, what people tend to think of is there's this huge positive aspect. In their opinion, there's a huge positive aspect. So, let's forget about the negative. Let's forget about the negative because of the huge positive aspect that they claim is part of the campaign.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's totally
you see that, but that's not good enough. That isn't good enough and that isn't looking at the issue at a deep enough level. Looking at the issue at a deep enough level is saying, look, we've got this money to spend, right? What is the most positive way we can spend it, right? Where there aren't any of these negatives. And that's kind of how all these things should be looked at.
Yeah, but Ronnie, I hear people are probably going to say, well, Ronnie Lee, it's their money. They can do what they want with it.
Well, yes, I mean, obviously in legal terms, but that doesn't mean that it's not that it's wrong for people to have a discussion about could there be a better way in which this.
No, that's right. Because the way I'd kind of answer my own question is that but we're in a social movement here, and so therefore
you see it's similar to the issue over the vegan campout. You see. Where people were saying, oh, yeah, last year's vegan campout was held at a place that also hosted shooting and animal farming and fishing. And there was a big row within the, vegan community over it. And people were saying, yeah, but like there's this huge positive aspect of the campouts that it kind of creates vegans and blah, blah, blah and all that. So therefore, that kind of outweighs this negative side of it. And to me, that was the wrong way of looking at it. That should look at, we're going to stage this big vegan event, right? What we should do in the staging of it is look at kind of how can we maximize the positives and minimize the negatives, and go for a place, as thankfully they have done this year, go for a place that isn't kind of steeped in the oppression of other animals. You see that people just think because there's some good in it, therefore we can ignore the negative.
Yeah,
well,
quite.
Let's not ignore the negative. Let's, you know.
Obviously, that raises quite a few issues, but it's also a little bit off topic. So, shall we?
Yeah, but it's the same. Yeah. It's the same way of thinking that people don't think. You know what is the best way?
It's utilitarian thinking. That's what we're dealing with.
It's kind of utilitarian thinking in that. Well, I mean, everything we do, in a sense, kind of we weigh in the balance, don't we? Because if we live in an imperfect world.
Yeah, but they were guided by set principles, like vegan principles. So that's what I'm saying. So
yes,
you know, so that for us, you see, it's difficult for us to look at this generation vegan thing because it would kind of be the last thing we'd think of. Like there's nothing that makes sense to us much in this, right?
Well, I mean, later on in the video, there's some, you know, I think that there kind of are one or two good points.
Well, let's move on to that then, because we've kind of neglected the video in a way.
Yes.
So I'll turn this on again, okay?
But yeah, I mean, we're going to give this money to charity, but by offering it to Rishi Sunak's charity of choice, we're getting a lot of eyes on the reasons why we're asking. So it's about drawing attention to the issues, how they're related to the foods we eat, and why Rishi should be leading by example.
Isn't it true that veganism is increasingly popular? Almost everyone you know says they're a bit vegan or a little bit vegan. They're sometimes vegan. You know, is this a vegan product? Isn't it amazing how many more products there are that you can buy than you could just a very few years ago? So it seems to be massively on the up and up.
See, the interviewer here.
Yes, you can't be. You cannot be a little bit vegan.
No, but the thing is that's still not.
That's what she's saying. But you see,
it's a question of whether she should take time to correct the interviewer.
Yes, I think there's two issues here. Is why has Vanessa Feltz got that idea in her head? She's got that idea in her head from somewhere, and the reason she's got that idea in her head is this. You know, this is the way that things have been manipulated. So, you know, to make veganism seem as if it's just a diet.
Veganism is a diet. I think part of the question goes back to, well, certainly my experience of the press office, which is that if you develop a relationship with journalists, they make less and less of those mistakes, I think. So I don't know whether our movement is not kind of doing that. There's just like too much going on or something. But certainly in terms of, you have to be very careful. It's kind of like methodical and systematic.
All the kind of publicity that people are bombarded with is really about veganism being a diet, isn't it?
Yeah, but
you know, it's all about the food, isn't it? It's all about the food. Right. And so it's kind of hardly surprising that a lot of people end up thinking that's what it's all about.
Yeah, but do we talk about the food because we're asked about the food, or do they ask about the food because that's what they think veganism is? See, there's a kind of, chicken and an egg situation, to use another non-vegan phrase.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't think chicken and egg is non-vegan. It depends what happens to the chicken and the egg, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah,
but I think the thing is that you see a plant-based diet, a vegan diet, is no threat really to the fundamental status quo, right? Because what happens is, you've got like, big, capitalist industries and that producing animal products for consumption, right? What they're interested in making money, making a profit, right? Now they can, they can fairly easily switch to plant-based, and we see this happening now, don't we? We see that, like, so much of that, the plant-based milks, the margarines, the cheeses, and all that, all the, these things that like are kind of wanting to kind of look like animal products are produced by companies that produce animal products. I mean, you've got companies like Frey Bentos have got a vegan pie, you know, one of the most evil companies in the world in terms of the oppression of other animals. Oh, great, we've got a vegan pie. Richmond with the vegan sausages. They're jumping. It's very easy. It's just like, it's just like, you know.
But this is inevitable, though, isn't it, Ronnie?
But you see, it's kind of like we remember when we had the, you know, the VHH tapes, didn't we, for recording things off the telly, and then it was before it was Betamax, and it was VHF, and then you had stuff on there, and then it was CDs, and now it's MP3s, right? But and so that industry has adapted. Oh well, you know, this is a new thing, and we'll invest in that. We'll make our money out of that. It's the same with food. You know, they don't really care whether people are eating plant-based or whether people are eating animal products.
No, so Ronnie, are you basically saying that if the word vegan wasn't involved, it would be a lot? It
would be more accurate. This would be more accurate. Yes, if it was, if what they were talking about was plant-based, because I'm going back to, I say, see, it's no threat. That it's no threat to business as usual for big corporations for people to adopt a plant-based diet, because all they do is they switch. Okay, right, we'll scale down the milk production. You know, the cow's milk production. We'll up the, you know, the production.
Yeah, but in some people's model of social change, Ronnie, that's what's going to happen. You're going to get one coming down and one going up.
Yeah. In terms of that, but what I'm trying to say is so therefore, the promotion of a plant-based diet, right, and getting people to think that is all that veganism is, right, it is something that is encouraged by corporations, because it's no threat to them. What is a threat to them, if we say to people that really the vegan ethic means you have to consume less, we have to consume less, we have to produce less, we have to live more simply, we have to be less materialistic, that is a threat to corporations, because that's a threat to their profits. And that's what they don't want. They don't want people to know and to realize that veganism demands that. And the whole thing about the environment, that veganism demands protection.
Are you constructing a conspiracy here that they're deliberately labeling plant-based vegan because of what you just said?
Well, whether it's kind of something that they've sat down around a table and thought this is what we'll do, I don't know. But I think it's kind of, you know, it's you see, because that's no threat to them.
Yeah, it's
for
kind
veganism
of
to be regarded just as plant-based is no threat to neoliberalism. It's no threat to, you know, to corporations. Is no threat to profiteers. It's no threat, because all they do is switch to the, you know.
Well, I mean, the wider point there, though, Ronnie, is that a lot of vegans would say, well, you know, is that what we're in the business of as vegans, threatening neoliberalism? And of course, a lot of people would say, no, it's got nothing to do with veganism.
The thing is that if we kept entirely the existing system, right, instead of animal products, they were products that were plant-based. Yes, that would be better than it is now. Of course, it would be a lot better. You know, get rid of animal farming, get rid of industrialized fishing. You know, yes, it would be loads better, and we have to accept that. And you know, I agree with that. But it wouldn't be veganism, and it wouldn't be animal liberation, because there's all these other areas in which animals are oppressed by humans.
Well, I understand that, but you've just said it would be a lot better. So would that make it? Yeah, but would that make it a goal, you know, to go for that? Then?
Well, it depends if the way you promote that gets in the way of moving further along towards animal liberation.
Yeah, but the thing is, Ronnie, it could be the other way around in their mind, that if you point out that further on too early, you're not going to get the first bit done.
But what you don't point out, what you don't do is stop people from seeing that further on. You see, by saying that Rishi Sunak is almost there, that he's almost there.
Some people would say that's exactly what you should do. Not kind of reveal your hands type of thing. Be more politicians about it, ironically. And so you kind of gradually kind of lead people on, but you don't reveal.
But what you're doing, like, but you see, what you're doing is
it's a lot of little asks, not. Don't reveal the big ask too early.
I understand what you're saying, but I think the danger is putting a block in the way of that. If you're saying, if you're putting across a message to people that all vegan is adopting a plant-based diet, right?
Yeah, but that will be for the future, Ronnie. You go, well, we did say that, but
there's a difference between like where you put the emphasis. I agree that, like, with ordinary people, the emphasis should be on, like, eating a vegan diet, because, like, with almost everyone, the main area in which people kind of buy into the oppression of other animals, the main area in which they support that is through their consumption of animal products. So it makes sense to educate people about, but don't say anything within that education that's actually a block to them learning more about veganism.
The thing is, I'm trying to get into their headset here. Would it be a block? Because would it be that you go, okay, we've got a substantial plant-based population now, and then you go, and now here's veganism. They're going to go, hang on a minute, you didn't tell me. I mean, they're not going to do that, are they? They're just going to...
No, but you see, but you can kind of, you can make it clear to people that veganism is more than a diet. Without that,
it's a question of when, though. You see, that they're going to say to you, "Don't do it at first."
But there's no reason not to include some of that at first, is there? The main thing you're asking people to do is change their diet. I mean, that's a huge...
Yeah, I know, but I think what we're uncovering here is that there's still, in parts of the movement, and it's not been long since we've kind of overcome this to the extent that we have, that veganism has been seen as a scare word. And I mean, I've done a couple of sessions on this, and it wasn't long ago that all the national groups were talking about veggie and all that kind of stuff, and they were frightened of the word vegan. And I think that for some of the more corporatized campaigns, there's still a worry that that's still the case, I think. So they don't want to talk about veganism too early, except for this kind of adapted definition of vegan in the slim down. Yeah.
Except for it plant-based. But you see, it is important, I think, that people understand the fundamental philosophy, because at what point are they ever going to understand that? It's got to be introduced at some point, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it's a question of when, isn't it? That's
well, you see, yeah, but you see, if you're kind of saying stuff that actually, like if I was to say, okay, go vegan. All it is your diet. You can still carry on hunting. You can still carry on supporting animal experiments. You can still carry on, like, throwing your plastic in the street. You can still carry on, polluting and all that. That's okay, as long as you. I think if I was to say that,
exactly, that's what they think, and I think that's why things like sales psychology is very influential in our movement now.
But if I was to say that, well, doesn't matter about other ways in which animals are going to be harmed by human activity. You can be part of that as long as you don't eat animal products. If how would it be to say that? That can't be right to say that. And in a sense, this is what this video's saying by saying Rishi Sunak is, like, almost there.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, if it's down to me, you talk about veganism proper straight off, but there are these kind of ideas that it's not a good idea. Shall we proceed?
Yeah.
And I thought you'd say yes, hooray, but you didn't say that. You said yes, but also on the increase is eating animal products and animal-derived products of all different kinds. So explain how they can both be on the up and up.
Well, people are understanding that meat products have consequences, that has an impact on climate change, on health, and obviously on the animals too. But the population is growing very quickly. And alongside that, people's consumption of meat and dairy is also increasing. So we're seeing more and more animals being slaughtered in the UK, more and more factory farms are needed to raise those animals. And because of the influx of factory farms in the UK, we're also seeing much cheaper and
well, there's an issue for me, the factory farm thing, but
yes,
the entire movement talks about factory farming.
I think there's two issues there. I mean, the factory farming thing is that really that we should just be talking about animal farming, right? Because, well, and also the fishing industry as well. We should be talking, the danger of kind of talking about factory farming is people think, well, like if I can get my meat from a non-factory farm, then everything will be all right. And then this is like, once again, we're going into the area of red tractor or RSPCA approved, whatever that's called, and people, are made to feel that it's okay.
Yeah, but that's unsustainable. It's unsustainable. In you can't scale that up really. So
no,
if you want to destroy factory farming, you destroy all
the other interesting thing you see about you've got factory farming. It's intensive farming of animals, and that's people argue, well, that's terrible for the animals in those conditions. If those animals were roaming in the fields, they'd have a better life, even though they're still slaughtered at a tiny fraction of their natural lifespan. So you've got that. The thing is that extensive animal agriculture is actually more harmful to the planet, and can be argued it's more harmful to like free living beings, to wildlife. And the reason for that is because the amount of land it takes up, and this is something that George Monbiot argues, the amount of land that extensive animal agriculture takes up is far greater. And that is land that could be rewilded. That's land that could go back to forest and that then would draw carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So it's actually, there's a sense in which it's extensive animal agriculture is kind of more harmful but in a different way than factory farming. You see, so which one's worse? They're all bad, and we shouldn't be kind of really distinguishing between them. I don't think.
I think you might say that really Generation Vegan are just following the lead of the rest of the movement, and so veganism is largely a diet, and you mainly talk about factory farming.
Yeah, but the other thing, and I think this is Naomi made a very good point in this section, that's often overlooked. By vegans, like everyone thinks, oh, isn't it marvelous? There's all these new vegan products in the supermarket, and more and more people are going vegan, and we're winning, and yay, great, we're there. Like, what? There's all this. There tends to be that attitude, when in fact it is absolutely the case that the consumption of animal products is going up, and it's actually outstripping the kind of it's outstripping veganism. We're still losing. We're still losing the battle.
The point was the growth of the population, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's two reasons. Like if you look at it worldwide, one is population growth, because most people being born now, are consuming animal products, and that's outstripping the new vegans that are being created, right? And kind of that refers to this country and probably throughout the world. But the other reason why the consumption of animal products is on the rise is that the countries in the world that previously where people largely ate a plant-based diet, or the consumption of animal products quite low, they're changing their dietary habits. They're consuming more animal products because they see that as somehow the consumption of animal products somehow kind of connected with affluence,
status symbol, isn't it?
Yeah, and because it used to be only the rich could consume it, when poorer people are able to consume more because of it becomes cheaper, perhaps because of factory farming. They're jumping on it, you see, and this is another reason. So we're not. We haven't turned the tide You know, the tide is still in favour, despite the fact that there's all these, you know, more and more people becoming vegan. And so, and yes, it's better than it would have been if there hadn't been all this vegan education going on. We'd be in a worse situation than we are now, because the amount of animal products being consumed would be even greater than it is now. But nevertheless, we haven't turned the tide. If we're going to turn the tide, we need far more vegan outreach. We need far more vegan education. We need vegan outreach everywhere. You know, not just in, you know, not just in the centre of big cities through posters up and through adverts and stuff like that. We need it taken into every community, you know, into suburbs of cities, into small towns, into villages, on a community
Ronnie,
level.
I think what these people might say is that, well, yeah, we're getting on the telly, so the grassroots can build on this, and it could almost be like a coalition. Now, obviously, it's the fundamental differences that you would point to, but I think that's how they see it.
Yeah, I'm not against people being on the telly. I'm not against people getting publicity. I think, you know, I think that's brilliant. But I think it's kind of, you know, let's look to see how we can maximize the positive message and minimize anything negative that kind of you would be part of that, you know, with these resources we've got to kind of generate this publicity. But you see a huge way, like I think a wonderful use of £1 million would be, you know, we need to stimulate vegan outreach everywhere, and we need people to stimulate that. I think a wonderful use of £1 million, a wonderful use of a lot of the money in the movement, would be, let's employ people at like regional level to stimulate outreach. Let's employ people that will go to local areas and get vegan outreach groups going, help people, encourage people, you know, give people the resources. You know, these stimulators of outreach. We need those.
You could pay for my van insurance as I'm struggling.
Well, stuff like that. You know, where like, you know, relatively small amounts, you know, of money. I like preventing people doing stuff. You know, this is very simple. This is very kind of cheap way of doing things in local areas, but could be hugely effective if we can take outreach right down into our local communities, and where, you know, a lot more of the money in the movement can be used to actually to actually fund that, employ people to do these things.
Yeah, well, you can't help thinking what £250,000 could do for the SADs for a start.
Well, yes. I mean, they're always in need of equipment, you know, obviously. But if we're just thinking about like vegan outreach, because this is what this is all about.
Yeah, I know, but
there's a huge amount to be done. We need to think. We tend to think like big, spectacular, don't we? Oh, there's been a big thing on telly, and there's been, you know, look at that big poster, and look at that, you know,
spectacular.
Whereas we need to think,
Shall we move on? We're over the hour, so let's move on a little bit, shall we?
Available meat, dairy, and egg products, so they're more available, more affordable, and they're what the growing population seems to want to eat.
So you say they're affordable. For other people, they're much less affordable than they used to be. And maybe this wouldn't be the time to do the more expensive thing and go vegan.
Yeah, well, it's only expensive if you buy kind of the mock meat products and go to all the fancy vegan restaurants.
Now, this rankles with me a little bit. They're talking about expensive and, you know, people are kind of tightening their belt and all that kind of stuff. But it's not being linked to giving £1 million to a millionaire.
No, that's that's.
I mean, there's a deep irony here, surely. I mean, I'm surprised that the journalist didn't pick up on this and go, well, hang on a second.
Yeah, yes, of course, you know, like people, but you see, kind of where, you know, I think the good point Naomi made there was about that, you know, veganism doesn't need to be expensive. You know, people live on kind of processed food, or any processed food, whether that's vegan or not vegan. It's going to be more money because there's the cost of the processing to, you know, to be factored in out of that. But you kind of don't need, you know, all this. You know, I can understand, you know, the value of the vegan stuff that's trying to look like meat and like cheese, you know, where people are used to eating that.
Yeah, well, just on that, Ronnie, what do you think about calling it mock meat?
Well, it kind of devalues it, doesn't it? In a sense, to call it, it says, "Oh well, this isn't as good as meat," you know.
Yeah, which is exactly
whereas I think
what the non-vegans say, you know, because you go, "Oh, have you tried the Mac plant?" And they go, "Oh, you mean that mock shite?"
You know, these things need to be, you know, kind of sort of marketed in their own right, really, don't they? But you see, the thing is that you don't need any of those things to live on a vegan diet.
Well, she said that though. She said that,
and that was good. You know, that was a good point. You don't need those things. And in fact, the cheapest diet in the world is a vegan diet where you making things some basic ingredients.
Well, she's kind of said that as well.
Yes, and I think that's good.
The thing that I found ironic is that conversation is then going on at the time when you're showing pictures of the richest parliamentarian in Britain. Absolutely. It just kind of like think, whoa, you know, it's a little bit weird, that, isn't it? You know. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on a little bit. I think there's a bit that I want to come on to here,
which is great for those that can do it. But sort of the base of our diet, where most of our calories come from, are kind of fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds. So we stick to those basics. It's naturally being much cheaper and easier to produce.
But a tremendous emphasis on meat and animal products as kind of an essential part of festivities, whether it's the eggnog, whether it's the custard and cream on the pudding, whatever it is, seems to be that it's kind of almost endemic in our souls to want meat, fish, cheese, eggs, and all the things that the animal kingdom can provide. So you tell me why we should start to think differently.
I think that traditions are very important to us. They're a big part of the memories we make with our families and growing up. But just because something is traditional or part of our culture doesn't mean that it's a good thing. You know, hunting used to be very much a part of our culture, but it's becoming more and more unpopular. There was a time when, you know, women couldn't vote and there was things like slavery in the world. So
now I think that was the strongest part of what Naomi said, because I mean, essentially, I mean, they both didn't name it, although I mean, they're talking about cultural speciesism there.
Yes.
And so I think that it was interesting that it was raised in the way it was and also answered in the way it was. And so I think that was a kind of finest moment of the interview, really.
Yes, I think that was very good. And I mean, the interviews are mixed, isn't there? You know, she does make some very good points, and then there's some things that are questionable within it. It's not like kind of one thing or the other, really, is it?
No. But going back to our time, it's hard to do a perfect interview as well, isn't it?
It's kind of very difficult to do a perfect interview, but I think
I mean, how many times did you leave the studio thinking, "Oh, I wish I said this and I wish I said that"?
Yeah, there tends to be always things that you kind of wish you'd said, and kind of my, you know, whenever I do interviews, you know, my golden rule is the thing that I want to say the most, say it as soon as possible, because you don't know, you very often don't know how long the interview is going to last. So you get that in as quickly as possible, and you kind of say what you want to say rather than what the interviewer is asking you, because who you're communicating.
Yeah, well, I think that's what she could have done.
Yes,
after that big rapid fire 5 or 6 questions, because I mean, like, she was never going to get through the answers to them anyway, so she might as well not have bothered answering them and just said what she wanted to say. Because but the point is, I don't think she would have said what we would have said, which was the philosophy bit and blah blah. You know, so
no. But I think when anyone doing an interview on the television or the radio, what you got to remember is who you're communicating with is the public, not the interviewer. I mean,
half the time the interviewer doesn't expect you to answer, do they? I mean, they don't necessarily expect you to answer.
No, and once you start saying something, you're saying it, aren't you? You know, so say what you want to say. Whatever they ask you, say what you want to say, because who you're communicating with is the public, and you've got to think, what message do I want the public to hear?
Yeah, actually, you know, Tom Reagan was really skilled at that. And if you listen, you can go on YouTube, but there's an audio of his appearance on the Moral Maze. And a couple of times, about 2 or 3 times, they were trying to interrupt him, probably on the basis that they didn't think he was answering the question. But he would go, "Excuse me, if I may finish," which is a great kind of way of doing it, because it makes them look the rude one then. And so he was really kind of good at that in terms of interview technique.
But you see, with this whole thing, what I'd like to say is, it's like I kind of understand that these people are trying to do something positive. They're wanting to promote veganism. This is an idea they've had whereby they think, this is going to, make a lot more people vegan. This is kind of why they've done it. I think they're fundamental.
No, I don't think that's true, Ronnie. They're not promoting veganism.
They're promoting what they think is vegan. They're promoting what they think is veganism. Yes. And they think, if more people adopted a vegan diet, then it's better for the animals and etc. Yeah, that's what they're thinking. So,
I mean, vegan, ironically, I mean, we tended to try to kind of make that separation, plant-based and vegan and all that, to be meaningful. And now they've been brought back together again, and vegan becomes the shorthand for plant-based diet.
Yes, and this is the problem. And I think, going back to what I said previously, I think there's an explanation why, advertisers are all too happy for people to believe that, because it is not a threat to corporate business. Plant-based diet is not a threat to corporate business. It's not a threat to status quo.
Well, look, we're pretty near the end, so let's just run it on a little bit longer then, Ronnie. Yeah.
I mean, things can change, obviously.
Things change, we develop, we look at what we're doing and we say, is this the right thing to be doing anymore? Can we give more rights to animals as we've...
Now, I wanted to pick this up because this is interesting, because that rankles with me, but it's probably not something to make a fuss of, because nobody will really understand what's wrong there, right? But there's a lot wrong there. The idea of rights being gifts and stuff, or maybe we talk about the difference between moral rights and legal rights, but all that is way too complicated. Surely it's not even an issue. I mean, it's an issue for me, but how many other people would even hear that and go, "Whoa, hang on"?
Whether people would make that distinction in the idea that, like, animals already have fundamental rights.
So it's not a question of giving it to them.
They already have those rights. What we want is for those rights to be recognised.
They have rights that are disrespected, not that they don't have them.
And we want those rights recognised through the way humans behave, and also through law. No, and that's
that's the thing. You see, I mean, that's a debating point for me, but it's a non-point in this argument, I think, or this video, I think.
Yeah, but it could, it's like a point. It may not be much of a point with the public, but it's kind of a point within the movement, isn't it? And a point within the vegan community for people to understand.
It's a claims making point. That's what it is. Yeah, that's right. So I think we're let me just run it on a little bit. I think we're almost at the end now.
Done to other marginalized groups. So I think as we change and become a more progressive society, we need to look at our traditions and think, are they something we should be doing? Are they something we need to be doing? Can we be doing better for ourselves, for others, and the planet?
So if people see the poster saying, Rishi will give you £1 million for your favourite charity if you go vegan for a month, you've got the money, it's not all talk, people can see that poster right now, will you go vegan for £1 million? And you hope he says yes and takes you up on your offer.
I really do. I do think he'd enjoy the vegan journey. I did, my whole family did. We didn't think we would. We thought it would be challenging, but we loved it. It's done wonders for our health and our mindset. So I do hope Rishi will at least consider it, because it would do wonders for Great Britain, our biodiversity.
It's a killer campaign anyway.
Yes.
I mean, it's very, very noticeable, making a big impact. Thank you very much.
Vegan
I think we have to say,
again.
I know. I think we have to say that I think that Vanessa character, I think she liked Naomi because she was quite kind. I mean, she could have had a real go, but
it wasn't a Piers Morgan style interview, was it?
No. So and I don't know how experienced Naomi is in doing that type of interview. So we've got to kind of say kind of well done. It's just that the actual framing of some of the issues were a problem for us, but also the premise in the first place is the real bugbear, isn't it, for us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
and I think fundamentally it's yes, it's a mixture here. That it's positive things about it and negative things about it. But we need to go for campaigns that maximize the positive and minimize the negative, and we can do. There's all sorts of things you can do if you've got £1 million to spare. And I think that's
I mean,
that's the question.
Well, you see, I think this is one of the things that make it's a bit gobsmacking for us too, I think, in the sense that the idea of having £1 million and you come up with that is a little bit bizarre to us, isn't it?
It kind of isn't. And I kind of think of how much has been achieved, by people that kind of didn't have two halfpennies to rub together, through the years, like the kind of how people have, maybe where they have done so, have campaigned in local areas and done things, on a shoestring budget. That these things aren't kind of massively expensive, but they do need funding.
Well,
and
there must be some analysis somewhere, though, Ronnie.
Yeah.
That, I mean, like, this is the third time now. I mean, the Pope, then Trump, of all people, and now so three incredibly problematic people.
Yes,
presumably on the utilitarian calculus, because they're all going to generate publicity. But presumably there must be some analysis of the Pope and the Trump thing, and they must have been good. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it a third time. Within their terms.
I think what's happening is they're looking at the publicity that's been generated.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
and they're looking at the publicity. This is generating publicity. This is going to make people think about veganism. People go vegan, or at least people go.
So within their own terms, it works, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because I think they're only looking at the upside of it, and they're not looking at the downside of it, and they're not taking into consideration the bigger question of, like, what is actually really the best way to spend £1 million? Is it doing this, which has got this really big negative side to it, or is it doing something else that kind of doesn't have the negative side and is just positive in terms of promoting veganism?
Well, maybe they'd say, well, Ronnie Lee, we did look at all of the things and this ended up being the best thing to do.
Well, I would find that kind of, I think, quite difficult to believe, because surely there must be ways of generating publicity that aren't problematic like that is, and aren't problematic like offering the Pope £1 million and offering Donald Trump £1 million.
Actually, one thing that's interesting is that they've done it 3 times now. I wonder whether, it's like with the media, they kind of go, okay, well, we've done that, got the T-shirt, have you got anything new? And so, how many times are they going to get away with doing the same thing anyway? I mean, apart from all the problematic stuff,
I think, the kind of spectacular campaigns all have this problem. I mean, I think it's a problem, for instance, Animal Rebellion are going to come across, like how many, because you can't do the same thing.
No, I mean, I used to talk about this when we used to do media sociology, and the case study in terms of social movement kind of organization was Fathers for Justice, and they got a lot of publicity by just dressing up as superheroes, and then they couldn't get any, and so then they found themselves doing banner drops off bridges, and then finally they ended up invading Buckingham Palace, right? So they had to escalate in the same way of we've been told by journalists, kind of, oh, well, we've done that, haven't you got anything new? By which they mean new means more extreme, more newsworthy, doesn't it?
And in the end, there's only, you end up running out of ideas. But you see, with community outreach, you don't come across.
None of that applies. No,
none of that applies, because what you're doing is in your local community, you're distributing leaflets, you're holding information stalls. You're using other methods of spreading the message.
And even community media and local media is better at that.
In the local media, and
it's the big national mass media.
Even local media. Now, in our local newspaper, last year we had 6 letters published promoting veganism. It's 6 letters published promoting veganism.
Yeah, but we can't put that. We can't put that alongside a TV
No, but you see, if you had all local groups were doing that, then the number of people reached would really be quite considerable. You see, and so that would be impactful in terms of spreading the message. And that's really simple. It doesn't actually cost anything to send a letter to the local newspaper. No. And I'm not saying do that instead of TV. I'm not opposed to advertising on television. I mean, we ourselves, our local group, we advertise on social media in our local area to promote veganism. That costs a bit of money.
Actually, though, Ronnie, it would be an interesting kind of workshop, like a Zoom workshop thing. It's okay, we've got £1 million budget. How can we get mass media?
Yeah, I kind of think it. I kind of think it would be. I think the other thing as well is that, and also this goes back to being either or, is that we do need to have a whole variety of different ways of promoting veganism, because different people are affected by different ways of it being promoted, and also that many people, they don't become vegan just because they see one thing. It takes a number of different exposures to the message before they become vegan. So we do need lots of different ways of spreading the message. And I'm not saying let's all write to the local newspaper and have no TV adverts. I'm saying yes, we kind of need to have both of those, but kind of what's very, very lacking within the movement at the moment is this localization, is community outreach. That's the thing that kind of seems to be really lacking more than anything else, and something that's absolutely essential. So we kind of really need to get on board with kind of how we can promote that and how we can fund it.
Well, I wonder, talking about TV adverts, how much $1 million could buy those, and for how long, and how many times repetition and stuff.
Well, I think you'd probably get quite a lot with £1 million for a TV advert. I know Viva ran an advert, didn't they? I bet they didn't spend £1 million on it. No, they didn't spend £1 million. No, I think it was in 100,000 or something. It wasn't £1 million.
What, for one run of one advert?
I don't know how often it ran. I mean, it was on the television.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, I imagine Generation Vegan would say, well, look, we've looked into all that in depth, and this is the best kind of thing, I suppose they might say.
Well, whether they have or whether they haven't, I think it's still important. You still have to take into account the negative aspect of these things. And I'm not sure people do.
For me, it's just the initial premise of the idea that this is anything to do with veganism, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that of course is a huge negative aspect to it, isn't it?
Yeah. So
that you're kind of misinforming people. You want people to go vegan, and yet you're kind of pointing in a direction which isn't vegan. And then if they are going to go vegan, you've got to kind of haul them back from that. And so you have extra work to do because they've been kind of sent down this wrong road.
I mean, it's a gimmick that's liable to alienate a hell of a lot of people, and you're slapping the vegan label on it when it doesn't even deserve to be there.
Yes, and I think that's this is difficult, but I think it's kind of, it arises out of the times we're in. The fact that it's hardly surprising, really, that people are using the word veganism as a substitute for plant-based when that is kind of so prevalent everywhere.
Yeah, the battle for the heart of veganism goes on.
The heart of veganism, yes. I mean, we had, and going back to talking about Rishi Sunak, there's a group called Vegan Conservatives, and basically they year before last, there was quite a few of them are going to do veganuary, and our local member of parliament joined in and said, I'm going to do veganuary, I'm going to join Vegan Conservatives. I think perhaps temporarily join Vegan Conservatives to do veganuary. The guy's a shooter, similar to Rishi Sunak, the guy that shoots. He's a guy that's failed to take any proper measures to combat the climate crisis, always votes for the government. And
maybe he's a full-blown vegan now, Ronnie.
Well, no, he quite definitely isn't a full-blown vegan.
All right.
And yet even the thing that, you know, that word, labeling themselves, but when you've got this group of people that are all doing lots of different things that harm other animals, you know, through their voting, through what they stand for. And so just because they're going to kind of, you know, stop eating animal products, perhaps only for a month, they're calling themselves vegan conservatives. You know, like it's kind of,
well, maybe this is just a modern day version of the kind of misgivings we had about the League campaign to ban hunting, because, you know, I mean, taking your MPs out for a steak dinner in order to get a ban on hunting kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's again, we're back to gross utilitarian calculus, you know.
Yes, yeah.
So
but it's really important, you know, if we want animal liberation, and, you know, if we want, you know, all other animals or as much as possible, you know, to be freed from oppression by humans, then we've got to emphasize the importance
what do we want, and when do we want it? I think nowadays, I say several decades ago now it's got to the stage of not shouting now.
Well,
anymore.
yeah, I mean, you know, we're not going to get animal liberation now, but we do want it as soon as possible, and so we need to do what is required and what is necessary in order to obtain that as soon as possible. And I think very, very often we don't do that.
No, well, I think that's a point that we've made several times on this little series, and we're undoubtedly going to do it again. So look, we're coming up to 1.5 hours, so I think we should draw the curtain. In fact, I'm due to go on to a TikTok panel as an experiment, but I think I might have missed it. So we'll see anyway.
Well, I mean, this is very, very interesting, because I think we spoke. Was it the last show?
Yeah. Well, if I do go on, I'll give you a report next week. But
because that's interesting. Because
I'm going to say goodbye for both of us in order for me to get onto that and get off of this.
Okay. Yeah. And so you know, this is going out on Tuesday.
Tuesday, because it's Saturday now.
Well, it might be Wednesday for people in Australia.
So Ronnie Lee in two places at once. You know, who'd have thought of that?
No, there we are. See, the incredible powers of this man, eh?
Right, people, live vegan and prosper. And
that's right. Yeah, take care, everyone. See you soon.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.